Everybody knows that sewing is a different hobby than collecting fabric and notions, ribbons, lace, patterns. These are two separate hobbies, and as sewists we collect a lot of sewing supplies and just basically sewing things. I'm midway through actually reorganizing my entire sewing space here, and in this video I want to go through with you the best way to actually sort and organize all of your sewing supplies so you can find them when you need them and just actually get on with your creative work. Welcome back, my sewing friends. It is always so lovely to have you here. Welcome. If you are just new, welcome. My name is Evelyn Wood and I'm the creator of VintageSewingSchool.com. And here on this channel, we talk about everything sewing so you can get better and improve your garment sewing. Now, we do all know that we have a lot of sewing stuff, like all the supplies. It accumulates so quickly. And so I'm actually midway through reorganizing my entire sewing space myself. There's a separate vlog about that, but this particular video is the second part in a 3-part series just about how to. First one is just like in the 3 stages of actually reorganizing your entire sewing space. So the first one is design and plan, and that video is linked down below. All the videos will be linked down below. We did that last week. This video is all about sorting and organizing all of the things, which we need to do before we can store and decorate. So we'll be talking about how to sort and organize all of your sewing things. So by that, I mean organize them into groups of things that make sense for you in your sewing and your workflow, because the organization is really personal. It depends on you and your style and what you go for. So we'll be talking all about how to group them to organize them into ways that make it easy for you to find what you need when you need it. So I have broken this down into 3 different categories of items that we're usually storing: fabric, patterns, and haberdashery and notions. And we're leaving that category to the end because it's the largest. So you really only need to ask yourself one question, I think, when it comes to organizing your sewing supplies. And that is, when you go looking for that item, let's, for example, say it's a zip. When you go looking for that item, what is the situation that you're in? So for example, with a zip, when you go looking for a zip, what's the situation? You're probably midway through a project up to the zip stage and are looking for a zip to fit your garment. Or you're preparing a design and have a pattern and looking for a zip that fits the pattern. So when you're looking for your zip, if you're looking for it to fit a garment, you're either looking for a certain size or a certain color. And so that is how you would start to look at organizing that particular item, because that's what you'll be looking for when you go to it to try and find one, right? See, it's pretty easy. Let's break this down into the different items so it really makes more sense and you can see how this will apply to you in your sewing space. And let's talk about how we organize fabric. So when you go to your fabric selections, what is the situation that you're in? So you'll have 2 sets of fabrics because you break it down into these categories even further. So you'll probably have fabric on rolls and cut lengths of fabric. And then there's also scrap fabric. But let's talk about cut lengths and rolls. So when you're going for a cut length of fabric, what is the situation that you're in? You're probably looking for a fabric to go with a skirt or a blouse or a dress or something that you already have in mind, perhaps. And so in that case, it would make sense to categorize your fabric by weight, because you'll usually be looking for something lightweight for a blouse or a medium weight for a skirt. See where we're going? Or perhaps when you go to your fabric, you actually only use the same type of fabric the whole time, quilting cotton, for example. And so if that's the case, it would probably make more sense for you to organize via color. If it's all the same weight, you're probably just looking for color tones. So organizing via color makes sense in that respect. Maybe you only do casual wear or evening wear, and perhaps that is what you're looking for in the different, when you go to your fabric section, that's what you're usually looking for. It's pretty easy. Start there and categorize from that. And then we have scrap fabric. So when I go looking for scrap fabric, how you organize this, and it might seem silly to organize scraps, and maybe you don't, but I like to, because there's usually a few reasons why I go looking for scraps, and it saves me time if I have it organized. I'm usually either going to look for like tiny little scrappy scraps as I call them, which are just bits and pieces that I might want to just test stitches on my machine, run through the overlocker, just sew something on it to see how it works. Just tiny little things, or even a cleaning rag, like real scrappy stuff. And then I also have a section, it's actually one of these, that I say is good scraps. And these are leftover bits of fabric that I might actually be able to do something with. So larger amounts or really nice prints or something like that that I would use for, you know, a contrast collar or interfacing or, you know, something like that. Larger amounts of scraps that you can do something with. So that's how I like to organize my scraps, but just think about what you're looking for when you go to your scrap pile to grab something out. How does it make sense for it to be organized? The next category is patterns. And so we all have a lot of patterns. You may have patterns that you hang, and I would definitely recommend a nice rack, or you can actually just put a hook on the wall and hang those to save space. The hanging patterns are wonderful, but that's usually not the problem we mostly have. It's these. So at this point, you just want to get all of your patterns out and then separate them, organize them into the sort of groups that you're wanting to sort them into. So ask yourself the really easy question. When you go looking for a pattern, what are you looking for? Are you looking for a skirt or a blouse or pants or a jacket? So that would be the logical way for you to organize your patterns if that's what you go looking for usually. Or do you, when you look for a pattern, are you usually looking for a decade of something? Maybe you have different decades. So in that case, it would make sense to divide all of your patterns and organize them via decades. You get where I'm going here, right? So maybe it's a summer or a winter. So think about how you go to your patterns and look for them, and then basically just go with that and then divide them out into all the little sections further and further. So then you've got all your different piles, and we'll talk about, you know, next week's video is about how to store them. This is how to organize them. So that is how I would organize my patterns. I like doing it by a little bit of decade and usually by garment style. So I'm usually looking for a pattern in a blouse or a skirt or pants, and so I like to organize them that way. But I do also like themes, looks, 20s look, a 40s look, a 50s look, like that as well. And so then we hit the really big one, and that is haberdashery and notions. Now this is where all of your organizing skills will need to come in, because it's where we have the most little bits of things. So I suggest first starting with separating all of the different items. Pull everything out of their drawers, of their cupboards, wherever they're hiding, put it all out and actually separate them into the little piles of what they are. And then we separate them down further into there. I have separated all my embroidery flosses, my cotton tapes, my ribbons, fancy ribbons here. I have, what else do we have? We have labels, I have a surprising amount of buckles. Yeah, I know. So pins, little bits of, well, they're not all the same, unpicks, etc. Needles, sewing machine needles, hand sewing needles, snaps, hooks and eyes, buckles. What have we got? Zips here. You get the picture. Miscellaneous. So there is a miscellaneous pile. So let's give a few examples of a few of these pieces. So needles. When you go looking for sewing machine needles, what are you looking for? Usually a size or ballpoint or jeans or something like that. So separating them and organizing them into those little areas is what I would do. So I will separate my needles down further into those little sections. Let's say buttons, for example. When you go looking for buttons, what are you mostly looking for? Well, usually your pattern will tell you a size of a button, but we all know we generally go for color, right? Because there's no point having a button that doesn't match your fabric that you're using, because you can change the size of your buttonholes, etc., and the spacings of your buttons to match the button that you want to use. So I like to organize my buttons by a color because I'm always looking for color, not necessarily size. I can change that because I want the color. Get what I mean? So it really helps to look at all of your different notions here and sewing supplies, particularly all the haberdashery, into what are you go searching for. And so this is where you'll put them like at this stage, as I said before, pull every single thing out of every cupboard, everywhere, everything, and put them into their little groups of like items. And then from there, group them down and organize them further so it makes sense for you in your sewing routine. Because when you're at this stage, then next week is where we hit the really fun part, is where we get to store them, because essentially we want to store them in the way that they're organized. So it makes it really easy to start to go on to the next phase from here. Because you already have all of the plan and the furniture arrived, all your storage solutions from phase 1 should already be here. Now everything's organized, you're pretty much ready to move on to the next phase, which is next week's video, so it'll be linked down below if it's already in the future, but that is where we'll be storing and organizing. Storing and decorating. I really hope that you are enjoying this series and following along to get hashtag so organized, and we'll spell that with a Z for our US friends. So use the hashtag because I love to see it, and also tag me, Evelyn _Wood on Instagram as well, so I can see all of your wonderful sewing room transformations, because I'm midway through mine and I will have a vlog all about that too. So let us know your favorite ways to actually organize your sewing supplies, to give us all ideas on how we can better look at organizing our sewing supplies as well. Can't wait to read all your comments and see you in next week's video. Okay, happy sewing. I should say sorting and organizing your sewing things. Bye.